our board has had a chance to hear from the team and to examine it, but we want to make sure that the residents of the neighborhood and other folks that are stakeholders in this had the opportunity to come here, hear from the team about it. You'll be seeing a presentation from the planning team, as well as some comments from representatives of PARK, who are doing a transit-oriented development study that is along this corridor, and then we will open it up for comments and questions at the end of that. And again, I'd like to make sure that the comments and questions are directed at the project and are, you know, positive and composed in nature. So I'll be helping moderate that. But we really appreciate your attendance tonight and your interest and your commitment to the neighborhood. I want to recognize a few special guests we have in attendance. We have Council Chairman Orlando Goods here, as well as Councilman Joseph Citro has joined us. Is there anybody else I need to recommend? Or I'll recommend you both. They're doing a great job for our city, but to recognize them. All right, with that, I'll introduce the master planning team here. We have Camille Gooden and Tim Baker from Baker Barrios Architects. They were the master planning team, as well as David Alonia from the Tampa Housing Authority here, representing that group. Later, you'll hear from Steve Shoecraft and Justin Willits, who are with HART and the TOD study. So with that, I'll go ahead and invite you up and turn the dais over to you.
Well, thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think this might be one of our first non-virtual community meetings, so it's a thrill to see. Is everybody okay if I stand back here with no mask? If you guys aren't, I'm happy to put the mask on. So if everybody's okay with that, you might be able to hear me a little bit better. Tonight is really a conversation. We have gone through, starting in last September, so over a year ago in a month, you know, we embarked on reimagining the Robles Park property and how we can leverage that property to not only uplift the neighborhood, but uplift the residents that live within that neighborhood. And we've had a lot of fun doing that. We've had a lot of community engagement and a lot of community input. I already have a technical glitch. When we started back in September, and even though we were under sort of COVID protocol, we made a significant effort to reach out to the community. We had over 35 community workshops. A lot of those workshops were focused on the residents of Robles, in addition to the community stakeholders. We had over 200 one-on-one sessions with several community stakeholders. We also formed several focus groups. Those focus groups focused on specific topics. Some of those topics were health and wellness, jobs and economic vitality, education, housing, open space, transportation, safety and security, the Zion Cemetery. And on each one of those focus groups, there were experts from around the community that led expertise and advice as we started to formulate the plan for the development. That information from each one of those working groups was advanced to a steering committee, and I believe Shane was a part of that. Not really too engaged, but he was a part of the steering committee, which represented the Tampa Housing Authority. We had numerous meetings with those steering committees to kind of filter through the information. Again, taking all of that back into the residents and the community. We also built out a website try to update that on a weekly basis, push out email blasts into the community to keep it live and active. So, and that happened all the way through the project. So the planning study lasted about 6 to 7 months. And each month was sort of a cumulative update on the information. So we were really pleased in a time where it was difficult to get folks together, how we were able to leverage sort of the social media platforms, but also most of our meetings were outdoor underneath the oak trees out at Robles. Some of you may have attended that, and those were very well attended. You know, we, as architects, you know, and planners, it's not unusual to think, oh, okay, they're going to come in and they're going to apply a lot of ULI standards to the development. They're going to create some beautiful parks, some beautiful buildings, some complete streets, make them bikeable, walkable, and incorporate SEPTED principles for safety and security. And we've done all that, and we're looking forward to kind of showing you that. But for us, that was the easy part of the assignment. The difficult part of the assignment, and where we felt very challenged and compelled, was how can we leverage this development to directly impact the lives of the individuals that live there, to restore opportunity for the residents and the neighborhood so that they could climb the ladder of opportunity and reach different rungs on the ladder into prosperity. Because we felt if we just come in with a new plan, new buildings, new streets, new parks, and don't fix the systemic problems that are there, we're going to have the same neighborhood in 30 or 40 years from now. It's going to be blighted. It's going to look run down. Crime's not going to go away. And we won't have done anything other than provide some new housing for some fine folks. So I would say if I had to sort of carve up the pie, 2/3 of the effort was really drilling in to the problems that the residents in the neighborhood that are in that sort of poverty category face, and how can we use this property to build them up, to give them access to opportunity. And we're going to share that part of the recommendation with you first, and then we can go into the more traditional planning concepts after that. But, and some of you may be familiar with the work that Purpose-Built Communities has done out of Atlanta. They have very successful neighborhoods throughout the country. The Harlem Kid Zone for children and education also has some very successful programs throughout the country. Nashville has a very good economic and job sort of strategy, talent development strategy. So we really tried to go out and canvas really the best in the country of what these communities had to offer and assemble that into our concept and our theory for this development. So it's going to sound really simple, and it is a simple concept, very difficult to execute, and we're now at the implementation phase of the project. So what we feel is the really hard work is ahead of us. But the simple concept is, in the heart of this development, there will be what we're calling the hub. And that hub is a 50,000 plus or minus square foot facility. And inside that hub are the rich resources of the community. So a lot of the major corporations, and we're going to get into that, are going to be housed inside that hub. And inside that hub, we're going to predominantly focus on 4 specific pillars. One is health and wellness, and we'll go through that board in a minute. We have 3 of the major hospitals sponsoring this component, but it's bringing in health and wellness and access to health and wellness for the residents of Robles and also the community at large. We're going to be looking at an educational program, a cradle to career education continuum. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So the access to this continuum will be inside this building as well. We of course have housing and the sort of immediate needs around housing. Those supportive services will be inside this building, and that's traditionally what Tampa Housing Authority does. So they will be in that building as well. And then we will have a significant jobs and economic vitality program through education, through incubators, through financial planners that will also be inside this building to help navigate families through and allow them to grow in their skill and access to better financial opportunities and jobs. So what we discovered from the residents, and it was pretty clear on day one with them, is most of them realized that there were vast resources, vast nonprofits throughout the community. They didn't know how to get there. They didn't have the capacity to organize their lives to actually connect all the various dots. They didn't know how to pay for it. And so while the resources and the assets were in the community, there was no real tangible connectivity for the residents of Robles and those in the immediate neighborhood. So with the hub, the concept is if you live in the neighborhood and you have a need in health and wellness, education, cradle to career, housing, supportive services, or jobs and economic vitality, all you have to do is walk in that front door. There will be concierges, what we call navigators, much like the Ritz-Carlton. When you walk in there and you want to find a great restaurant, you'll walk up to this desk, you'll meet a navigator, they'll try and understand your family dynamic, and they'll build a program custom to you around each one of those 4 pillars. And they'll build it for you, they'll build it for your husband or wife, they'll build it for your mother or father, they'll build it for your children. So it will be a complete program. And if you get stuck, really all you have to do is walk back in the building. And so the residents of Robles were delighted to hear that story. And we're excited to kind of share with you sort of some of the strategic partnerships that we've already sort of advanced into making this hub a reality. So the first one I'm going to go through, and then Camille is going to help me with the other 2. But on health and wellness, it won't be a surprise that impoverished neighborhoods don't have access or even really knowledge or time to build out a health and wellness program. They don't have access to healthy food. They certainly don't have dollars to join fitness clubs and trainers. And so when you look at the demographic within the neighborhood, there tends to be sort of, they score very low in the health and wellness categories. So we're working with Baycare, Tampa General, Moffitt, to build out programs inside this building that will include things like primary care, dental, a true health and wellness program, nutrition programs. There'll be a teaching kitchen inside this facility to help really organize and put a health and wellness program together. If you have a need for a specialty service that isn't within the 50,000 square foot hub, they will connect you to their hospital systems and their healthcare system to give you specialty care. Florida Blue will be inside this building to help you with insurance and the financial components, so that it's a complete sort of one-stop shopping on health and wellness, and they will connect you. Tampa General and Tampa Housing Authority also have committed to provide mobile healthcare units to go out into the neighborhoods to knock on, those who don't have mobility to get to the hub, to provide dental and primary care and some basic health needs at the doorsteps of the residents who live in Robles. But I want to make it clear, these services are not limited to just Robles. It's if you find yourself in need and you fit into the poverty category, these services are available for those who live in this neighborhood.
So this next pillar is the basic needs and housing services. Now, this is a service that Tampa Housing Authority already offers its residents, but this way it will be, yet again, on site where you walk in and those needs will be able to be met. The needs that we're speaking about here are, again, you come in and you need housing. Well, we'll help you find that housing, hopefully within Robles Farm or elsewhere within the community. Do you have food insecurity? They'll help connect you with food. If you're having issues with childcare, which is something that we heard time and again from the residents, that they just needed somebody to watch their children so that they could go to work, or emergency childcare where your child is sick and they can't go to their traditional daycare, and they can help connect you with somebody who can come in and take care of your child so that you can go off and do what you need to do. All of these services will be located within the hub and will be serviced primarily by Tampa Housing Authority, but with support from so many others in the community that THCA works with on a regular basis. With Hillsborough County, with Feeding Tampa Bay, Metropolitan Ministries, these are the groups that will be represented here within the Basic Needs and Housing pillar.
Yeah, so, and obviously the basic services and housing are really the traditional services. We've attached a more comprehensive package because there's things that the Tampa Housing Authority doesn't provide that other community partners in the community do. And so we're reaching out to the nonprofits to join this consortium, to join us in this effort to really create not just a local model, but a national model in solving the crisis in impoverished neighborhoods. And so we're getting a lot of support throughout the nonprofits and the for-profits throughout the community to engage in this project with us. So, you know, when you canvass again the sort of the landscape of Tampa and look at sort of the educational, both traditional education, after-school education, sort of the weekend education opportunities, and the summer activities, there are many. There are many very high-quality educators throughout this community, but again, they aren't connected. So we've been able to bring Hillsborough Community College or Hillsborough College. We've been able to bring Tampa University, the CDC, all together to create a cradle-to-career education program that, you know, no matter if you have an early learning preschool child, or you have an 11th grader, or you're an adult that wants to get back into the university system or education system or certificate training program to increase your skills so that you have better economic opportunity, you will be able to get into this ladder no matter where you are in that ladder. And it's hard to read, but you can look on the boards. That will feed you into a system of available programs. What, again, we heard a lot from the residents of Robles is, my children are covered, you know, from 8 o'clock to 2:30, but after that, we can't connect them with after-school programs. We're not sure what to do with them on the weekends, and we surely don't know what to do with them during the summer. And so, because there's so much sort of inactivity during those hours, it leaves the children very susceptible to making bad choices. So the goal here is to provide a very robust program for after school, for weekend activities, and for summer programs to keep these kids engaged and into a positive track. The Civic Association, Lena and Owen, have a fantastic program. And as we look to implement this project, we've looked at a lot of the educators in the community, and they really have best in class. And we look forward to advancing the conversation as we move into this second phase on implementation, because I think part of the secret sauce lies right there with those two. They've done an amazing job in your community already. They understand the residents already. They understand your neighborhood already. And we look forward to engaging and advancing the Cradle to Career pipeline education program.
Final pillar is jobs and economic vitality. This is something that's a little bit unique. We haven't seen this done in other communities. We've certainly looked at purpose-built communities. This has not been an ingredient, so we're kind of winging this, but we think it might work. So what this does is this helps those in the community to get the training that they need to get into a high paying job. These are not your minimum wage jobs. This is training that's not only going to make a difference in their lives, but it's going to make a difference for the community of Tampa overall. So what we're going to do is we're going to work really closely with the Tampa Bay EDC to help understand what are the jobs that are needed in this community. What industries are we attracting here in this area, and what are the skills that are needed for workers in those different roles? So we've spoken with them, and it's going to be a conversation that continues and evolves over time too, so that the training evolves over time. But basically, what will happen is you will come in and you'll say, "Look, I need help. I'm looking for a career. I'm not quite sure what I want to do." You will speak with a counselor. They will try to find a path that's right for you. A lot of the training will be able to occur on site, because another issue that we heard from a lot of residents is they don't have access to, a home computer or reliable Wi-Fi. So by having a computer lab on site where they can come in, where there will be those who can help facilitate the education, to help them, whether it's a certificate program, an associate's degree, or even a 4-year degree, we can help do that either on site or with partners off-site. We've spoken a lot with Career Source Tampa Bay. We've spoken with Hillsborough Community College and others in order to try to help develop this program. And so we also realized that for many, that perhaps a job, working for somebody else, that's not their thing. They got their own ideas. We spoke with a lot of people who had some really cool ideas, but they didn't know how to start a business. So within the hub, we will also have business incubators. We will have people there who can mentor them to let them know these are the steps that you need to take. This is how to apply for a business license. This is how to apply for a patent. Maybe you need a lawyer. These services will be available to you. And if these services are not available on site, we'll help you get to these services off site. So this is a springboard for the residents, whether they are looking for a career, of their own that they can build from the ground up, or if they can plug into a job on the outside. These services will be available to anybody of any age. There will be separate resources that are actually geared towards young adults from the ages of 16 or 18 to 26 that differ a little bit from some of the older adults coming into these programs. And furthermore, once you've got this job, well, there's a lot of people who aren't quite sure how to manage the money now that they've got it. We'll help with that too. Help you balance and make a household budget. Help you with your taxes. If you're interested in home ownership, we'll talk about the steps that will help you get there. That's an important part of this project that Tim will talk about in a little while. Is that while many of these homes and units within the Robles Park community are multifamily housing, we will have some for sale product within the neighborhood. So we want you to grow up and financially and become more responsible as you take advantage of the programs that we're offering here. So that's the basic objectives for jobs and economic vitality.
So inside the hub are these 4 pillars, and again, residents in the neighborhood have access to building programs around each one of those and collectively together to create really a fully built out program to help them overcome whatever obstacles they face. And so it's a pretty big lift to think that this would be successful. We're encouraged because we did it in a much smaller way in Orlando with a project called Orlando Lift. It's been operational now for about 7 years. We had a single mom who was homeless come into our project. We got her set up with one of our healthcare providers to put her into our educational program. She studied really hard. We helped with the wraparound services to help with her children. We got her into some permanent multifamily housing. She graduated from nursing about 2 months ago. She's now qualifying for her first for sale home in the development, and she's done that in about 2.5 years. And she's thriving. And that's what we wish and hope for everyone within the Robles development and anyone who is in that situation within the neighborhood. So we're very excited about the hub. and what that hub has to offer, that's way beyond just a master planning project and sort of new buildings and streets. Now, having said that, we're going to have new buildings and streets, and they're going to be amazing. We're going to have parks and open space. We're going to have complete streets. We're going to have SEPTEP principles that have applied over there to provide safety and security. We're going to have connectivity to transportation. And so, again, the conceptual master plan, and it's really a bit fuzzy here, but if you look at East Lake is running from right to left. That's really imagined as a completely new street profile. It is the entire 35 acres. There's a significant amount of infrastructure work that needs to be accomplished to build out the structural framework for the development. And all of the streets within Robles will be new streets. They'll be bikeable, they'll be walkable, there'll be trees that are on a rhythm, there'll be street parking, and what you would expect into a modern day neighborhood. But East Lake Avenue is our main street that connects through from east to west. And along that main street, you'll see where it's bisected by a north-south street is really the center of the development. So the hub is the little H building right in the center of the master plan. So that's that 50,000 square foot building that we talked about. Directly outside the front door of that is what we're calling Celebration Park. So it's a large park, open space to allow the community to come together to celebrate holidays, to have art festivals, to have market, and really just to celebrate communion and life. Running parallel to East Lake is what we call Memorial Park. There's a lot of history relative to the development, so there's a sort of a linear fountain that bisects the Celebration Park. And along that walk is where we intend to memorialize the rich history of the neighborhood, as well as the rich history of the residents who lived in that neighborhood along that walk. And you'll see that it terminates really in sort of this memorial garden, which is the southern door into the Zion Cemetery. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Zion Cemetery. I'm sure most of you have heard and read about sort of that, and we have a board on that. So really there's this linear park that goes from east to west that ends in the Zion Cemetery to really sort of enrich the history, the rich history. Along East Avenue, you'll see in the bottom of the two L-shaped or C-shaped buildings in number 12, we're going to be lining that with neighborhood retail and also some of the apartment amenities. So that will help activate East Lake Avenue and bring eyes on the street, create some activity zones there. And then it's anchored facing Florida Avenue in East Lake is about an 8,000 square foot grocer. We see that as a boutique grocer that's going to provide healthy nutrition for the neighborhood, for the Robles residents as well as the neighborhood. And then just to the east of that is an early learning center and a little art pavilion to really accommodate the early learning center that is already up in the northwest corner that exists today. The bigger blocks are the residential development. These are going to be 4-, 5-, and 6-story buildings. The housing product will be a range of affordable housing. There's 1,000 units. 800 of the 1,000 units are classified as affordable, and affordable in this project is mixed income. So you'll have everything from the voucher program that the Tampa Housing Authority already has to 30%, 60%, 80%, 120% AMI within that neighborhood. That's permanent affordable housing. I want to say that again, it's permanent affordable housing. So when we get into gentrification issues and all that, because one question we get is, well, it's great that you have this hub, but when everybody gets rich because they've taken opportunity, then the door is closed. Well, we hope that you get rich. We hope that you find great opportunities, and we hope that you move out of this neighborhood somewhere else in Tampa and buy your house or rent a, a market rate housing, I mean, that would be great, because that allows room for the next group to come in and take advantage of the resources and the opportunities to grow. So the idea is that out of the 1,000 units, 800 are permanent affordable housing meant to take advantage of the hub and the services within that hub. And we think that's a really exciting opportunity. Camille also mentioned that it's not just for rent multifamily. There are, how many townhomes do we have? 77, thanks David. By the way, David Ionia with Tampa Housing Authority, he's been the champion of this with our team as well. So 70 plus units are going to be for sale. So, and those are going to be for sale for residents that sort of came up through the hub. That's sort of their graduation present, but they still will have to qualify for an affordability sort of bracket. So somebody like myself can't come in there and buy one of those units. It has to be sort of from the neighborhood and part of the neighborhood, still climbing their way up this ladder, but ultimately putting permanent home ownership in the neighborhood. We have a very significant park system. There's some gorgeous trees, oak trees that are throughout the property. So we've been very careful to sort of mark those. There's the biggest clump of those is just south of the hub. And so the idea is that the Celebration Park then sort of cascades into the hub, then cascades into this sort of natural park that's just to the south where the beautiful oak trees currently are, where we held most of our community meetings. And then that cascades into a Robles Park, which exists today. So again, it's very strong sort of north to south linear park system to really organize the green space within the overall development. I don't know if I missed anything. And then this is, just an artistic rendering of what the master plan looks like in massing. We haven't really gotten into the vertical architecture and what the architecture style is going to be. That will be future workshops that we have with you folks and also the residents to find out what's best for your neighborhood. We do sort of, you've got a very sort of Florida craftsman sort of district, kind of a little bit on the quirky side for some of it. So we kind of envision it in that vocabulary. But again, that will be in partnership with you folks, because it's part of your neighborhood, on what it actually looks like. So Zion Memorial Cemetery, and I'm going to let Camille kind of talk about sort of the evolution, and it's still a process that's going on. It was sort of a sister project that went parallel with the master planning. And for those who have been keeping up with the media, in the 30s, in the turn of the century, it was one of the oldest African-American cemeteries on record. And somewhere in the 30s, somewhere in between the 30s and the 50s, it sort of got paved over and vanished off the face of the earth. And then just recently, within the last 5 years or so, it's been discovered. And so there's been a lot of conversation about that injustice and how we can bring a focal point, not only locally, not only regionally, but nationally, to this particular injustice to restore that. So part of this development will include a sort of an educational pavilion. We don't really want to say museum, because we really want this to be used by the community, both to support the community efforts, but also to educate on the past, the present, and the future related to social injustice and the inequity that occurred. And I'll let Camille kind of walk through some of the concepts that we're working with. There is a formal board that is been put together. We're advisors to that board. So there's still a tremendous amount of design work and discovery that needs to happen there. But know that it is part of a significant part of the development.
As Tim mentioned, this is very early on in the concepts. These concepts were presented to the Zion Cemetery Preservation and Maintenance Board and Society. And we just looked at a couple of different ways that you could approach restoring honor and respect back to Zion Cemetery. So we kind of go from the least impactful to the most impactful. With the first concept, it's very simple. It's just completely restoring the cemetery back to what it once was, which is just a very simple space. It would be fenced off. We would look at the idea of having some sort of monument near the cemetery, but not in it. We don't want to impact the cemetery land at all. So that's what you see in the first concept. Please note that the land that you see with the building, that this is not part of the Zion Cemetery land at all. It would be separate and it would come later. But it would have an opportunity to house this educational center, perhaps have some sort of monument located there, separate of the cemetery. Because again, making the cemetery, a reverend space, again, something that has honor and respect is so important. With the second concept, this really kind of tells more of the history of the site. It's certainly unfortunate what happened. It's unfortunate that part of Robles Park Village was built on top of Zion and other buildings were built on top of this land, but their histories are now intertwined. So what you see here, what remains is the outline of each of the buildings that are currently standing on top of Zion Cemetery. The buildings themselves would be raised, but the foundations at ground level would be kept, shown as kind of a scar to the land. Additionally, within this particular design concept, you would have a marker for each of the burial sites. What we're showing here, which is again very hard to see at this resolution, you can see a little bit better back there. We are currently showing all of the burial plots that have been found, but we know that after these buildings come down, there will be more work done, and certainly more sites will be found within the cemetery. So each of those will be recognized. In the final concept, this almost takes the entire site and turns it into kind of a monument to itself. It has water that would meander through the site, avoiding any and all burial sites. We do this because the symbolism of water is so important to the African American culture, because it's the water that brought people from Africa to America. It's the water that transports you spiritually into the next world, and it is water that is cleansing. And so that is something that, we want to do. We want to hopefully do a little bit to right the wrong that was done on this site and have that recognized. So these are three completely different ideas. It is not up to us to direct this process. It is up to the Zion Cemetery Preservation Society to let us know what the best direction is, and then we'll take it from there. We do expect that if there is a memorial, that there will be a nationwide search for an artist to be able to create that memorial. So we are excited to see where this is going to go, but we believe that this really can be a beacon for the situation that has happened over and over again, not just in Tampa, but throughout the United States, and can help other communities recognize that this may have happened in their community and to right the wrong.
So, Camille mentioned that there's a board that's been working on this, that will continue to work on this. We did incorporate this conversation into all of our community workshops. So we did get a pretty broad sort of opinion and collaboration on thoughts and ideas, of which many of those ideas and concepts have sort of been baked into the three concepts. The final concept may not look like any of the three that we're showing. What we wanted to try and communicate is there's an idea where it's very low impact, and you restore the Zion Cemetery back to a cemetery. put a teaching pavilion outside the boundaries of that cemetery, and the memorial outside the sort of the sacred ground of the cemetery, all the way to doing you know, a more complex design that integrates the memorial and the cemetery, carefully respecting sort of the burial plots that are in there. And so we're super excited about this. We think you know, it's a great educational opportunity, not only for the residents, not only for the community, but for the nation on this very specific and sacred and hallowed ground. Okay, we're about done. Right. So, you know, we get a lot of questions on timeline. So the timeline, the Tampa Housing Authority is moving into their phase 2, which their phase 2 is the implementation phase. So what we've shown you tonight is really the concept. Now the really hard work of pulling the strategic partners together to build out the hub, but also the sort of the financial resources to build out the infrastructure, the horizontal infrastructure, and then also the funding to go vertical. We're anticipating it's going to take the Tampa Housing Authority about a year to move all the residents into new locations. The idea, and we looked at both concepts about partially demoing and moving part of the residents in the part that we didn't demo, rebuilding, then moving them back. The residents, I think, unanimously talked about just move us out, rip it down, and start rebuilding it. And when you rebuild it, we'd love to come back. And the residents do have first right of refusal to come back. So year 1 is really moving the residents. Year 2 is the demolition and kind of cleaning up and site prepping. And then we start to move into year 3, 4, and 5 and beyond to start building the various phases out. You know, the phases will come in 200 to 400 unit chunks at a time. And there'll be a substantial phase 1 to the development.
So are you saying that we're moving everyone at the same time? That's the decision now?
Yeah. Yeah. And the feedback that we've gotten is that crime is so horrendous over there right now that if none of the residents wanted to stay because they didn't feel that just a partial demolition would do anything with the crime. Now, we've had numerous meetings with the Tampa Police Department. We've had numerous meetings with the city. They're working with numerous meetings with Tampa Housing Authority. They're installing additional cameras, and they're increasing the patrols. But at the end of the day, you know, there is a criminal element that lives on that eastern edge, and so most of the residents there, for fear, have said, look, move us out, tear it down, clean it up, and then rebuild it, and we'll come back.
Yeah, I just want to clear that concern. The relocation has not been determined in terms of how we do it. It could be in stages. We put out a survey, trying to solicit, finalize the solicitation to the residents, find out which direction they want to go. But we know that it's more efficient to move everybody out. That's what we've done in the past. But in this case, we're just trying to, you know, hear from the resident. Tim is correct. When we were conducting the workshop, everybody has the intention to move out. They prefer to move out. But their, you know, their mindset changes every day. So we actually started the relocation informational meeting with the residents every week, every 2 weeks. And then within that process, we then try to find out, you know, what would they prefer, to move out completely or to move out partially. So we're not going to know until we start the actual relocation process sometime end of this year, well, January 2022.
Maybe I have to say this. As a representative of an advocate for the residents, the first information system out there is about my half to be certain language. The last 3 I think they have language. Correct. But you also have seniors over there that are not contributing, they have not attended none of those.
No, yeah.
They have not attended a lot of things. In the meetings, we had opened with them, the majority of everyone wanted the whole property understand you from the survey. So I'm watching that very closely because in whole, for the past few times, when I heard about it was Tampa, the resident enrolled, you moved everyone. I do feel strongly that everyone should. Now, half came up, how did I get came up? I don't know what strategy it is. I don't know. But from the average, from the resident, and what I'm getting, and everyone's not on the survey, everyone was moved. I have to say this, and I have to watch this process very well because I sit on a lot of our committees. So I have to speak not for myself, not for you all, but for the residents, because I am a resident, I am a concerned individual, I've lived there for 5 years, I know the whole on that property, I'm the resident council president, and speaking for the residents, I think the whole property should move now.
No, I truly appreciate it, and I agree. My team has been, you know, having been within the building industry for a long time, I say, I prefer the total, that's more efficient. But again, we have to present it to the residents, and that's what we're doing now.
Sorry, if we could, before we get back into the Q&A, I do want to give Justin and Steve just a minute to come up and speak. Maybe if you guys 5 minutes, sounds good. Just to cover a little bit more, they're both from HART and THCA, and they're doing the transit-oriented development study of the Florida corridor, which has a transportation impact to this. I just want to hand out all the information, and then we can open it up to.
So I'm sure you guys have a lot more questions to ask these folks, but Brian asked me to come represent HART. My name is Justin Willits. I'm a senior planner. I'm the lead for the transit-oriented development study that is related to the potential streetcar extension and the potential BRT corridor on Florida and Tampa streets, going north up to the university area. And this study is really designed to look at what kind of policies need to change to better support transit service on the corridor. And a lot of that has to do with form and development around the station areas. And really the way it kind of ties in here is there is a station area planned at Lake. So we've given some comments to the study team about trying to cluster a little bit more of the density near that station area and some of the things they can do to support the existing transit service. We've made a few comments about reducing the parking requirements, as it is, I think 70% affordable as the current plan stands. We really think that there's just an overload of parking. If you're really supporting lower income folks, a lot of whom don't drive. I think there's more parking in this plan than some of their other properties, but they can speak to that more clearly than I can. And then I did just want to say that it's not just about the future potential transit service. This area, as many of you know, has existing transit service on Florida and Nebraska, on Florida, and then on MLK as well, connecting to 110,000 jobs within a quarter mile of the existing bus stops along those routes without a single transfer. So we feel like we don't need to talk about future transit service for the folks that are going to move into this area, that the existing transit service really supports these folks well now and can really support the future residents really well. So we want the project to reflect that, and we've worked together with them quite well, and we're really excited to be a stakeholder moving forward. I know you have questions for them, so I just wanted to throw that out there. We'll talk more and reach out to the association about our project when we get into the Palm Avenue stationary planning exercises. So I'll probably see you soon on that front, and I'll just hand it over to Steve if he thinks I missed anything or wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think that you know, the process this needs to go through, as Tim had mentioned, is that this is their starting point. It's got to go through additional meetings with the communities and work with the city to work out the details of the plan. As we think about it from a transit-oriented development standpoint, so what we want to do is make it really easy for people that live here to access transit. And that access, because of the site configuration, because of the issues with the cemetery, and the housing authority doesn't control the frontage lots that are directly on Florida Avenue. That access is going to be through Lake. So Lake is a direct connection between this redeveloped community with a fair amount of density and the right kind of density to that transit stop. So Lake is really critical. The quality, the walkability, and the quality of Lake is really critical to the success of this plan supporting the transit investment along the corridor. And Lake is an overlap between the housing authority that controls the property along Lake and the city that controls the right of way. So that's a partnership that we hope you all push through this to make sure that there's a significant commitment to those complete streets improvements on Lake. And Lake should be one of the most walkable streets along the project corridor to help make that connection. So of all the things that we think about with this plan, it's really the condition of Lake, and that requires the city to come to the table, probably with some money, maybe with some design services to improve that street, and the housing authority to deliver the kinds of walkable frontage conditions to make that a really pleasant, safe, comfortable walking environment. So they control the north side of the street. So you think about the quality of that walking environment along Lake, all the way from Central to Florida. That should be a really great walking street. So the things that we encourage you to look at as this moves forward is those specific conditions.
I did have one question. Prior iterations of the Florida Tampa bus rapid streetcar design nixed the bike lanes. Is that something, has that been changed recently, or is that still a missing component?
I can give the sort of the history of that. Is that we developed the sections for streetcar, so we're also the project manager for the streetcar extension project. When we looked at those sections, that was before the Heights mobility study was completed, where we have got the potential now to take a lane out service, and we might be able to accommodate the bike condition. So we still need to work through the detail of those sections, but I think there's a possibility we could accommodate.
Yeah, generally the concept right now is to remove the bike lanes in order to provide a physical buffer for as much of the actual transit busway as we can, and also to give more real estate to the sidewalk, because generally the consensus has been that there's more value to giving the sidewalk real estate than there is for the bike lane as it exists today. I'm probably one of the few people that bike up that road, and it's not terribly comfortable. DOT has worked through the Heights mobility study to invest in Ola and Central for some more treatments as bike boulevards. So we think that that's a pretty big win. But as you all know, it's about 50 feet of right of way out there, and there's just not much you can do unless you want to tear down a bunch of property, and that's not something we're proposing. So one of the many trade-offs we've made is the bike lanes for wider, more comfortable sidewalks, and then looking to parallel corridors for investment. With that being said, the right-of-way on the Tampa Street and Highland corridor is a little bit wider. So part of the investment under the Heights Mobility project that is intertwined with our bus rapid transit project is creating a shared use path on the west side of that street to accommodate bicycles and pedestrians, but the Florida Avenue corridor would not necessarily doesn't have the real estate to do that type of investment. But that would be that is planned for the Tampa Street section. So that was a mouthful, but so I'll hand it back over to them, since I know you didn't want to talk about our project tonight. So thanks for hearing us.
Yeah, so why don't we open up the floor to general questions about the programming, the master plan, if there is anything else transportation related, and first.
Can I ask a question on the first part, when you were talking about, all the different services? What are you doing so that there will be a trust development, so that the residents will trust someone to help them go through it, and how they, to me, on my background, it says the case manager, social worker, and it seems like all these things are overwhelming.
Yeah.
That they would need somebody to help them
Yeah, so,
work with it, and an ongoing person.
yeah.
Can I add that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your question is that how would the resident trust the process of then moving
No,
out?
I'm not asking that.
Okay.
That's not my question at all. Regarding the hub, I think my feeling is that there needs to be an individual that the residents trust to help them navigate the system. Preferably maybe somebody from the community.
Yeah, so let me
Something
explain.
along that
And
line.
this
That
is,
is familiar with that whole area,
So
so they can
the-
figure out
yeah.
what areas are applicable to that.
So the model, and we haven't worked out the details, but the model that's proven to work well is that the hub is governed by a 501c3 board. That board is, the half of that board is residents. The chairman of that board is from the neighborhood, the residents within the neighborhood. So you're building leadership for that hub at the resident level. The other half of the board are experts in health and wellness, experts in education, experts in jobs and economic vitality, and experts in the hub. Those are the ambassadors that go out into the neighborhood and to the residents to build that trust, to get them educated. Now, if you're a resident and you walk into the building, what I mentioned before is you get assigned a navigator, and that navigator is there to help you through your process. And it's not.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the board. I don't think the rest, I mean, I've worked with boards. I don't think individuals that are.
Well, the difference is you probably haven't worked with a board that's made up of the residents of the
But
neighborhood.
I still don't think the residents are gonna have.
Well, it's a proven model. If you look at purpose-built communities, you'll find that it's successful throughout the country in 40 neighborhoods, and it's worked very well.
You're not listening to what I'm trying to say.
Okay, then repeat
What
what you're
I'm trying
trying
to say is that as a resident comes in, that resident needs to work with an individual case manager that they trust, that will help them get through. I agree that a board that is composed of both the residents and the community is much better than one that just.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is
100% agree.
that each person, when they come in, I can do, because I've worked with this. A lot of times, there's this big disconnect between the person that needs the service and the person that's providing the service. And there's
Totally
not a
get
trust
that.
relationship.
And the main purpose of the navigators are to build that one-on-one connection with the residents, and they're their champion. And they're building it for all four pillars. So you're not bouncing from department to department. It's one individual. It's a case manager. I mean, the navigator is essentially a case manager, but it's meant to be a one-stop. And we heard that loud and clear from the residents. They're very confused by all the nonprofits and all the services. And once they get a service and it ends, they don't know where to go for their second service. So having a individual that's assigned to a family help them, and that's why we call them navigators, navigate through all the menu of options for each one, and build a program and monitor that program for them.
And practically, the Housing Authority has several departments that deal with residents and provide services and have counselors and specific case managers attached to residents. So we're doing that now, but this will be in a much larger scale. So that's program property services and assisted housing, the vouchers that we give to our residents. They have case managers assigned to them. When we relocate our residents, we have case managers assigned to them, and we case manage them until the whole place is built out. We still have case managers providing assistance to residents that we relocated from Central Park Village, which is now the Encore. We have case managers also doing the same for West River Project. So we're gonna have the same for this project. So they're gonna be with the residents until the development is built out. So the program of public services provided services to our residents who need transportation, who needs health services, who need daycare, needs education, GED, you name it, and also job provision. So we have that, we're doing that now. We have several departments that are handling that on our own, but this will be on a much larger scale.
But you're 100% correct. Without that connection, this is all a waste of time. So it is really important.
Yes, I just have two questions. The first one deals with funding. I appreciate that you've taken the wraparound approach and not just simply housing people, but setting them up for perpetual housing and being successful. It would be nice if there was an ownership component so that people could build generational wealth, but I understand that that's not, it would be, for the housing authority, that would be something, because I feel like that's a stepping stone towards success and building yourself out of poverty and giving people the opportunity to own as opposed to just generationally renting would be amazing. But on a bigger scale, I think it could be better. That's I'll leave it at that. In regards, so I guess from the funding perspective, how are you planning to fund all these services operationally? Like I hear 501c3, where is the money coming from?
Yeah, so inside the hub, each one of those pillars has partners like Baycare, Moffitt, Tampa General. They have committed to providing those services and resources inside the building for their piece.
Yeah.
We've got Hillsborough Community College, Tampa University, the public school system.
So did they have perpetual agreements? Do they have agreements in perpetuity to fund, like?
Well, that's part of the implementation. I said the really hard work is next.
Yeah.
So the hard work is, you know, everybody has sort of agreed to play in the sandbox.
Yeah. So,
and now it's striking the partnership agreements and the funding sources and who does what and how, you know, how this thing has a sustainable life to it.
Because I like rainbows and lollipops too,
Yeah.
but until I got the lollipop in my mouth and I'm coasting on the rainbow,
Yeah.
you know. And then the other question that I have is more geared towards the housing authority. Can you tell me what percentage of resident retention you're going to have from the original Robles Park Village to the new development? Because that also is a little bit of a concern, at least for me as a community member. How many people that are living in Robles Park Village currently will actually retain their ability to go into the new development? How many of those how many people are actually going to transition to the new development?
From experience, from what we've done in the past, we are experiencing around 10 to 15%.
Okay, so only 10 to 15% of the current residency will move. Now, why are we having that loss of population?
Well, the loss is sometimes they take their voucher and they leave the state.
Okay.
Sometimes they become self-sufficient, which that's what you want them to do.
Yeah.
They own their own home.
Okay.
They move on, and also they through the process of case management, they attain higher education.
Okay.
And then they have higher paying jobs. So they're not dependent on the housing.
That's like maybe 3 categories. Are you able, off the top of your head, to roughly, like, what are the percentages of each of those?
What do you mean? Each
people that
graduate.
Yeah, all
people that I don't have the details in terms of people, but we give them first right of refusal to come back. We actually have them sign and we update them on the progress of the development. For example, West River. As we continue to build out on the West River, we reach out to the residents. I had a presentation with them last month to give them update where we are with the with West River. Let them know so that if they're renting and still being case managed, they can know when to cut off their rent and return.
Yeah.
But most of them don't want to return. And some of them, you know, they're fine, they're comfortable.
Right.
Like I said, it takes about 6 to 10 years to build this thing out, and they move on.
You'll have to excuse me and I don't mean to be trite when I say this, that doesn't really sound like a realistic scenario. If I was living in complete squalor, which I think we can all agree that the current condition of the village is unacceptable, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's substandard. It's not, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it's not really fit for people to live in those units. They're completely outdated. They're not safe. Mm-hmm. Just from a building perspective. It sounds irrational. It doesn't sound realistic to me that somebody, when given the opportunity to move to a much better developed location where they're going to have wraparound services, that they would be like, no, I don't want to stay here. I'm going to go somewhere else. That does not make sense to me. If I were in that community, and I'm just saying me personally, and I don't live there, right. But if I were given the opportunity to have more opportunity, I obviously wouldn't shy away from having more opportunity, right?
I know, I understand what you're saying. It's gonna, I guess, very, difficult for you to understand. Now, we have the record, we measure this. We have residents who graduate, become pharmacists, doctors, they moved out.
Are you actually
cannot
doing,
force them to return.
are you
We've
doing-
given them the first right of refusal to return.
are you doing outbound surveys with the residents and asking them why they're not returning?
Oh, yeah, we have them sign forms.
Okay.
We have those binders.
Okay.
So we have, when I say we have case management, I hold meetings every month.
Yeah.
With the case managers. And we go through the process in terms of how many people are returning, where are the residents, how many have jobs, and we give them job opportunities. Even as we continue to build out our site, we connect with the residents in terms of with the contractors, because they have to comply with Section 3 MBE, and we help them, open up their own companies, and some want to go into trades and so forth. So we keep track of this. We have to stand by the document that we provide. That is absolutely number 10 to 15% of the residents tend to return.
So what's happening is I'm watching that process, and this is how, whenever they move out, they have to case management for 5 weeks. They have first party to come out. What I strongly say is their grandfather like me, because what happens is, in other properties that I know, when the third party management comes in, they do a background check, credit check, and things. Well, when I moved in Robles, there was no credit check. There was a background check down in 5 years. So what I told the residents, and you can believe the majority of them come back. As long as you don't get a charge while you're out there, when you move away, you're able to come back. So you'll be grandfathered like that you came in. So there's only a background check. Even if the credit is back, they're still coming back in because we were displaced to move out to build something better, so we want to come back the same way. So that process of them coming back, will come back. So you'll be a majority of them coming back. Okay. But you will find some that don't want to come back because they're going to be coming. Now there are some that don't want to come back out. They're not used to them, they don't feel safe. So they don't come back because that's something that we have discussed. And some of my meetings, as a resident council president, I have meetings once a month. So I go to these things with them. Even before relocation started, I was having meetings with them because I watched the process. I know what was in West Tampa. By watching that process, I watched how they did things. I watched how the return residents, someone was not able to come back, and someone was. So it is guaranteed, maybe grandpa Robles, because I'm one of the resident council presidents. I don't sit back and I'm not a yes person. I'm with them, but I'm not with them. If you're right, you're right, you're wrong, you're wrong. I trust strictly the people of the right. My background is mostly Robles, so I want to make sure they have that same opportunity they had when they left to come back in. And also, information and the center that they have the opportunity to go through that. The young lady was right. She was right, and I'm going to tell you why. Not taking nothing from housing. They are very much comfortable with me being in Robles right now with the case managers. They'll come to me before they come to the case manager. Because they feel more comfortable with me discussing their business than with the case managers for many different reasons on the housing. So you have to bring somebody up in there who is at the level of the same individuals that they will trust coming through that door, and then they can moderate out. Because if they don't have that trust, they're not going to come back in there moving. So that's something that has to be discussed. But I can guarantee you, more than 15 to 20% will be coming back.
I guess.
And I've had that discussion with them. And you are right, the majority of them, and the members don't seem right. And that's why part of the process.
My concern, and I guess you kind of pointed to it, like there are some people that won't be able to return because they were convicted of a criminal charge. And the fact of the matter is this: that person, that individual, did not have the support then that they will have in the future at the new development, right? You don't have wraparound solutions now where currently at Robles Park.
They have it.
They have wraparound? Is it going to be?
If we have charges, definitely come in and she gets the charges as fun. We have the program that comes in where the rent was stopped for a whole year to allow the residents to make as much money as they wanted to, and then to save that money for home ownership and things of that nature. And I was part of that, and I was actually volunteer that person and hiring for that, and I stayed on to make sure that everything was right for those residents. So there will still be program of public service portion of it, there's a lot of programs within housing authority to help. But the residents have to want to take the opportunity for that. So I want to make sure I'm there with them every step of the way. And believe me when I say I'm there every step of the way, I no longer stay in Robles, but I'm in Robles every day. I'm in Robles every day. So I still do things there and help out. And I'm on several committees of housing authority because of the simple fact they know my passion for the community. They know my passion for those residents. They know my passion for those kids. I have many of them now. Kids go to the schools and have issues too. They miss class, things of that nature. If families need food, I'm there to provide them. I partner with them as well because I want to make sure that everyone has this total wraparound service in this house. So just like you all are watching, I'm there on site watching everything. I'll be part of the committee that decides who leads. I'm on the Zion Society committee as well. So I'm very active in that community. And what I will say is I know a lot of y'all are very concerned, and I'm glad that you are. But I'm just as concerned as you. But I will be your eyes and ears, and I'll also be that mouth to speak for any and everyone you need me here. But I'll make sure that gentrification is not going to happen in Robles because it's happening everywhere. And I can guarantee you that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think you're answering for how many people that are living at Robles currently.
How many people? How many units?
How many people are living at Robles?
430 units.
430 units. You know exactly how many people?
Roughly about 1,200.
It's a little over 1,000.
Yeah.
Is there any plan for how to keep those 1,000 people in the Tampa area where they have jobs and their kids to school and all this, all this going on?
That's through the relocation education that we're going through the process now, once we start. The residents been through that before. We provide education, case management 101, 3 levels of education, case management, Section 8, and relocation. So we provide that information. Also, we provide, areas within Tampa. Some of our residents have not been throughout the Tampa metro area. So we show them the area so they can make a decision of where they would like to move. Some would like to come back to some of the housing authority properties that we have on the sites, or they can decide to take the voucher and move out. But we're tracking. So we keep track of all the residents that we relocate, and then keep them informed through the process of redevelopment, so that at every time when we finish each of the protocols, we give them the opportunity to return. But then you have to make sure from the time that you are relocated, you are in good standing coming back. But again, through the case management, so the residents are connected and the services are being provided to them.
And on the percentage of TPA before, from your previous experiences with this kind of project, you have around 1,000 people, and you're saying 10 to 15% usually return on average. That's about 100 to 150 people.
Yeah, we would like more, yeah. But now, West River, we're tracking those who are coming back. We just had a grand opening for Boulevard, which is 3 sets of building, multifamily development, 371 units. It looks like we're going to have more residents coming back to that as we're tracking them.
And just a question for a couple. How many people here are from the Robles community in this group right now? One?
Well, most of them are.
I have one question. You all spoke of the home ownership and how the reward of the individual stands there where you get the home ownership thing. Have you considered land trust?
We consider land trust and tax. Yeah, everything is catching out. That discussion came through in terms of land trust, but what we've done in the past is, remember that when we actually put out a RFQ to solicit for master development partners, which is just got the deadline was on the 19th. So we're going to go through the process, and then once we select the master developer, all this details in terms of whether it's the land trust or ownership and so forth.
That's what you've done in the past. Robles is a new beginning. Robles is a national model. Land trust would be great for Robles because of what it can do for those residents. What they can do. So if you're gonna make this a national model, you have to think outside of the box. And I know sometimes y'all think dollars, but I think people.
What I'm saying is that once we get a master development in place, and that's when that, becomes a partnership of those two entities. And that's when we begin to iron out the details in terms of how we can go. I would say, within the next month, we will flush that, we'll go through the process of reviewing their proposal, and then, determining who's gonna be the master developer.
So to clarify, that you've already received the proposal. We now are in the review phase.
We are in the review phase.
There is, if you want to go on to www.newroblespark.com, it will, it's the last year has been documented on that website. All the deliverables that have been produced from start to finish, a lot of the community engagement with the Robles residents, the survey work that went out. There's a 100-page kind of final report. So there's a lot more information on that website. If anybody wants to go to that and look at it, I assume it's still active and live. Yeah.
So, one of the, I just talked to the councilman who likes that have here. But what I heard Justin said was that the treatment of Lake Avenue.
The treatment of what?
Of Lake Avenue.
Lake Avenue. Mm-hmm.
As a community street, a walkable, bikeable street, needs to have the city and you talk to each other.
Yes.
And that's something that's very, very important to us. We want to make sure that that street is treated very carefully from the beginning, that we could have a street that connects these projects, but not isolated from the rest of us around the community. One of the things that we have been talking about over the last few months is Sacred Heart has done a renovation of their outside property. They did a good job in the front on Florida Avenue. We've been trying to get in touch with them to put a sidewalk on Lake Avenue. And they just left Lake Avenue as though a lot of people who don't have transportation don't have to walk Lake Avenue to go to transit that we just talked about. So we have to make sure in this process that the city and the housing authority get together so that at the end, we don't hear the city say, well, it's housing, and we don't hear housing say, well, it's credit. So that part we want to happen as soon as possible, so that we get.
My business card is up there.
Thank you so much.
So we have not just East Lake Avenue, all of the streets within the development are what we call complete streets. Walkable, bikeable, you can park on them, they have state-of-the-art security lights, and so they're very illustrative streets. That is a big part of the master developer's assignment, is to figure out the federal, the local, the private funding to build that infrastructure, and it's a big number. We've had several meetings with the mayor and her staff. She's excited, obviously no commitment to dollars or anything like that at this point, but very willing to partnership and to execute this. No developer is going to build the quality of housing without having the quality infrastructure put in place. So they go together and they go hand in hand. In Orlando, we have a project called Creative Village, very similar, 65 acres. And when we did that project, we received a $25 million Tiger grant through the federal government to begin our roadways. And we built what is the equivalent of East Lake state-of-the-art street with all the bikeability, walkability, street parking, very beautiful street. Unfortunately, those federal dollars aren't available. Maybe Biden's program is going to have some funding in there, but it's a big number. I think we have budgeted. For all the streets, it's in the $30–40 million range. It's a big number.
Tampa Heights is the oldest suburb of the city of Tampa.
Yep.
We love our historic character of the community.
That too.
And one thing we're fighting right now is that to maintain that character. So we are having meetings after meetings with developers, and it's just exhausting because people don't understand that those are some of the core characters of our neighborhood that we want to maintain. I'm just putting it out here that North Tampa Heights is a part of Tampa Heights, and in this 35-acre of development, we want to see the continuity of the entire community and character.
And we share that vision. This is from the very beginning. The idea that this is a walled-off community is not the concept. The idea is that you don't know when you're in Robles and when you're in Tampa Heights. It just seamlessly blends in. Right. It's one community aesthetically, and
I want to advise, if you remember when we did West River, Mayor Bob unveiled the master plan in 2013, right? But if you look at the master plan now, it's a bit different from there. So you started with that approved, but as you go on with the master development, begin to take a deeper dive into the site to look at, how the connectivity will work as you start with the vertical development. And that's exactly what we're doing now. If you look at the master plan today in West River, it's a bit different from what was approved in 2013. And that's going to take us in.
Sure.
I got a question from the development standpoint. What was the rationale with stopping Avon Avenue being continuous as it is now? Avon Avenue on the south side, now there's no drive-through, and let's say someone had to go north side of the village, they would have to get too late. They head north, head west, and then go back up. We start talking about the continuity of the design. What was the rationale behind actually looking at Avon Avenue on the south side?
Yeah, so I think that the main purpose of the north-south connector is, and this is kind of European design, but the hub is a very important iconic building in the neighborhood, and it becomes the focal point of that axial alignment. There are two streets that you're able to go either right or left around, and then they connect back at Robles Park to the south. So that continuous movement from north to south still allows you to go through the development, but it highlights the importance of the hub building as sort of
that hub building is on the south side of the lake, correct? That is on the south side.
Next on the other side, it's right here, it's from runabout. It was initially a two runabout, but now the design incorporated a half roundabout to allow function on the north side to not disrupt traffic flow on the south side. So you can literally shut this down because of the activity of the design. And so when that continues, then you can actually continue with traffic on later.
Okay, and what about on the south side? There's some buildings there that we as a board were talking about, was not able to really capture the beauty of the actual Robles Park. On the south side, at the very tip, all around, was that Emily?
Yeah.
It seems as though that, as you start bringing in residents and you want to capture the beauty of the park, they would be more facing of the park inside of this plan. It seems like it's not captured as well. Yes, they go to the west. That building there, right? Is there any possible? Say it again?
That's the 75 million market rate development.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is just to capture the park. You see, you have all of the, I guess the entrance into Robles Park.
Right here.
Yes, and why would, and it's just a question, why wouldn't the building be on that side to be able to capture the park?
Wait a minute, this be on this side?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think the planning behind it is to really bring the park into the development. Because this is, as you know, is a very beautiful, very park-like setting currently. And to preserve all of those trees, and to not really allow 100 residents to sort of dominate the quality of the park, but bring the park and allow everyone within the neighborhood to enjoy and experience the park. It's kind of the difference between building a condo on the waterfront or pulling the condo across the road so that the entire community can enjoy the waterfront. It's a similar concept. Sir.
Quick question for you, it's kind of logistical, redevelopment plan. From what I understand, everything, the senior housing is on the south side of Lake. The townhomes are on the south side of Lake. The hub's on the south side of Lake. And the market rate is on the south side of Lake. So does this mean that we're going to be basically segregating the community again instead of integrating different ages, price points, income levels into a mixed crowd, or are we going to create a south and north again?
No. So first of all, as you look from the boundaries in, this is all single family over here. So these little buildings that line the street, and they also extend in the north and also to the west, those little buildings, and even over here. So all the way lining is really, these are brownstones that step down to the single family residential. And so we push the height up into the middle of the plan. The bigger buildings that are on the north of Lake and this building are mixed income. So they have a little bit of everything. They have voucher, they have 30%, 60%, 80% AMI in that building. And so that happens on the north and the south. These are the two senior buildings that are in the development. And then the piece right here on the ground floor is the grocery, but sitting on top of it is also mixed income housing.
So on the legend, it says market rate is the southwest side. Is on the legend, it says market rate from that building right there.
Yeah,
it doesn't indicate market rate anywhere else.
Well, so market rate and a family building are identical in the way in which they're developed.
Okay.
It's just a legal.
But I want to add what Tim said on the bigger building. The structural placement of the buildings, you have more commercial activity to the north, looking towards Martin Luther King Avenue. So that supports that density in terms of this building, and then the more like a platform fit very well contextually with the residential boundary as it steps down. And then you can see the senior housing development fitting well within that residential level, as opposed to into more dense areas.
So is there a reason that I know like in the neighborhood, I have a senior living down the street or next door to me, like they're integrated within our community, so like you kind of have that engagement. Is there a strategic reason to separate seniors away from the rest of the housing?
Yeah, the main reason is that there's a federal funding program that allows you to finance a seniors building, and you have to fit a certain criteria. But the rest of the development is meant to be mixed income, and it really, because you don't want standalone classes, so to speak, within a development, because it just leads to, the systemic problems that we have currently. And so these are mixed income buildings. Even within the seniors building, it's mixed income. It just happens to be age restricted for the federal tax programs to fund those.
Okay, I think we have a question up here.
Will there be a single master developer, or will, I guess, maybe an RFP be put out for potentially local.
I think the way in which, I mean, there's been multiple developers that come in.
Yeah, the way the RFP was structured is to have one master developer and then multiple vertical developers as well.
So has the master developer been picked yet?
No, we haven't picked them yet.
Oh, you know, what's the timeline for that?
I would think a month and a half from now. We just received the proposal. We haven't looked at it yet. Yes.
You have, for the potential developers that the master developer will be overseeing, do you have a percentage of set aside requirement for minority-owned businesses wrapped up in that already set? Like
the compliance requirement, Section 3 MBE is 20% of the contract value, and the Section 3 contract is about 10%, and then Section 3 high is 30%. So we strive to make sure that, you know, the contractor or the master developer, whomever will work to comply with those requirements. They have to show good faith effort.
And it's not uncommon also, and I'm sure it's part of their selection criteria, that the master developer go beyond that.
Correct.
The teams we've been involved with also have mentorship programs to bring in residents and minorities to help train them in the different disciplines in the construction trades to get them kind of on-the-job training. So it's not just going out and hiring third-party companies. There is mentorship and training that the Tampa Housing Authority embraces with their development.
And the qualification, the response that we got, I wouldn't be surprised. You're going to see the application showing partnership with MBE and Section 3 within their partnership as well. So those are part of what we do.
I also want to say on the Section 3, I know it's residents, but Robles has a lot of people that hangs around them. And a lot of those people can't do it for the profit. They've been kicked out because their film been kicked out, and because of gang activity. Up under Section 3, not just the residents, I also want to consider hire some of those guys that come in the trees to get out the responsibility too, because I think some of them come up that come and selling drugs, but they have the opportunity to consider jobs and work for something more. And plus, they're going to put somebody in the community building that they can take as a part of as well. So I want to consider that.
Yeah, and already, I don't know if you know Lexus over there, but we hired Lexus, brought her in, she had no skill, single mom, you know, we helped train her, and I just found out she was just hired and got her a great job. And so, I mean, that's part of the commitment on these types of projects by the consultants that get involved with these developments.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you guys going to do any improvements to Florida, because you guys are adding a lot of parking spaces and cars to the community, and like to the side of Florida, between Florida and Tampa, those are small residential streets, and we already have an issue with Robles residents cutting through to get up to 275.
Right now we don't touch Florida except for the Zion Cemetery and the education pavilion, the museum that's up there. We don't own those lots that front directly. Wish we did, but we don't. And it's not to say the master developer won't come and try and, you know, at some point purchase those.
But are there any studies to show how it's going to impact the surrounding neighborhood streets?
Yeah,
because it's just scary that, you know, you're adding all of those cars and parking.
The HDR guys, they vamoosed. So part of their whole exercise, because they're bringing the BRT route up Florida, and part of their whole analysis has been traffic studies and flow, and so that's part of the HART study that's going on. I think, and that's a pretty extensive study regionally, but they are looking at Florida as it connects to Martin Luther, as it goes from Lake over to Nebraska. They're looking at that whole corridor right now.
Yeah, and I was a part of the meeting, this transit-oriented development concept that will impact this development in terms of stopping to encourage walkability and security within that area. I think based on the outline of the transportation line from Nebraska and Florida, we will benefit, the site will benefit a lot from it.
Okay, because I'm just, like, right now, like, if you park on the street, you have a hard time even opening your door because there's cars flying. Like the Emily right there going to Robles, that's a very popular like street to cut through. So we just want to make sure.
So once you hit the Robles property, the new infrastructure, those will be properly sized street parking with the safety zones. There'll be properly sized sidewalks to allow pedestrians and bikes. There'll be properly sized landscape buffers. But the master plan for the Tampa Housing Authority can only control what's within their property. Having said that, there are multiple conversations going on with the city currently on how this infrastructure extends far and beyond. They've connected us to the gentlemen that were here to start coordinating their work with our work so that it's kind of a seamless.
Okay, because it would make sense to like cut out like that building that's by the park towards the end of the development. Like if that building, you can't enter the community through there, people won't have a need to cut through the residential streets to get to Robles, things like that. Yeah.
So sorry, when I take that line of questioning, Josh, because you talked about that, where we with housing in here too. I think that may just be something that would be helpful put on the radar because again, yeah, the housing authority's development responsibility is here, like you mentioned. There's a lot of functions here, so maybe working together to make sure that as this is completed, that we're getting sidewalk additions and upgrades and completion outside that zone that make it possible.
I just want to make a comment more so. I really want the families who are there now, who are doing what they're supposed to do as residents, to be able to come back and want to move into this place. I think our employees make sure that if we start talking about 10 or 15%, that we have families that are success stories, and that will actually be a success story for you guys. If we really are serious about bringing residents back, we have to follow through with it. That has to be a follow through because all too often, a lot of times residents get relocated and, I've dealt with children directly from the village. I've dealt with children who move 6 times in a semester. How can that child be successful? Yeah. So I would implore you to please make sure that as we start talking about how this could be a successful project, it's not just the buildings.
Absolutely.
It's the people who were there before, who come back and say, yes, this is now home for me, because I didn't want to leave going there.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times these people leave and go to other locations and they can't get transportation because the transportation in those locations that they're getting vouchered to can't support it.
You're absolutely correct, and I can tell you that we have a lot of success stories that we've documented for Encore, for West River, as we speak, in terms of the residents that we are case managing, where they have been, because we track them, we support them, we provide that services to them as well.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get a few of those. Yeah.
That is done here.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And find out if that's being done. And I want to be able to just put it on record.
Oh yeah.
That's what as a community member.
You will not have any problem with that at all. Absolutely.
And I'm not necessarily wanting to hear about what's done in other places we have offices.
No, it's the same entity. You will not have. That's exactly what we want. Okay. What you said is exactly what we want.
A lot of the children, we work with children. We know when children are born, when siblings are born. We know these children personally. We come and they hang out at the door, at the step, they want to know where everybody is, they mind everybody's business. So we know the family is personal. For us, it's personal. You're right next door, we work and we live and we work and we do everything right in the community. So we are talking for families that we know personally.
Absolutely.
We really want to see this success story. We want to be one of the first ones to say you did an awesome job. So
absolutely.
We got to give ownership.
I'm going to tell you.
There has to be some element of trust or something that creates ownership.
I promise you, once this project starts and we begin to do what we normally do, I will ask for the invitation to come here and give you an update in terms of the progress of the project, because that's the goal. That's what we want to happen.
All right, I'll go ahead and jump in. I know we've had a few folks trickle off. Thanks for those that stayed. Thank you, Councilman Citro. I didn't know if you wanted to make any comments. I'm here to listen. Great. We appreciate you being here as well. Appreciate your Q3 and your teams and coming to represent that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Everybody that's tuned in online, if anybody's still out there, thank you for your time. Did anybody have any final closing comment?
Just want to say thank you for coming up tonight. See how much we are expecting this and proud to have. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.